experiencing without interrupting the flow of the rest of the regional network meeting. So today's agenda includes the following: an update from the CAEP office. Again, Dr. Carolyn Zachary is on the line, as well as Javier Romero. And then for the rest of the agenda, we attempted to structure the meeting in such a way that we were meeting two needs. The first one is to provide guidance and information to you. And then the second need was to share and have a discussion around areas of importance that we polled everyone to see what everyone was kind of experiencing at this time. So that's how the meeting is structured. So how it would look is we will present information to you. So CASAS, WestEd, OTAN, as well as CAEP TAB will present information and the results of the poll analysis that we conducted to you. And then after that brief presentation, there will be a discussion afterwards. So we're trying to find that fine balance in presenting information as well as receiving information from the audience and attendees. So it's a work in progress, but we're trying our best to find that fine balance for you all. So now I will turn it over to Dr. Carolyn Zachary, who will get us started with the CAEP office update.
All right, thank you very much, Veronica. I appreciate it. You'll see a couple of items on our CAEP office update. And the first one is a student technology intake survey. This is just about ready to be launched. And what this is it is to be used by agencies when they are enrolling new students, or to be used by teachers who could send it out to their whole class as they have continuing students. And it is using common language so that we can collect data statewide on adult education and how students have accessibility or don't have accessibility to technology resources to continue in an online format. The reason we know that many of you, your districts may have done this, or your colleges may have done something like this, but we're not sure that the language was all the same. And so we really wanted to have something common. A group of individuals from the field assist us in putting this together. They were really the work team that did most of the work. And it is going to be a separate tab on the Cal Adult Ed website that you can go to and send students to so that they could fill out the survey. It is also going to be in a PDF format. That way, if you have students who do not have access to technology, they can then take the survey in a paper pencil format, and someone else can do the inputting of the information. We look at this as an opportunity to not just collect this data, but to use this data then with our state superintendent as he's working on accessibility for students related to technology, for your local legislators so that you can talk to them about the technology needs for the students in your area, in your region. We also see that it can be used nationally to support additional funding related to adult education and technology. And so by having this common survey, we can collect all of that data that we wouldn't be able to collect if from each one of you having individual surveys that have a little different wording on them. So as soon as this is ready, communication will go out to the whole adult ed field so that you can begin working with your staff to disseminate the information. The second survey that this group of individuals from the field helped us put together was a reopening survey. What is school looking like as you enter into this new school year? And very similar to what we asked in the spring, but again, trying to see what the landscape is so that we can talk with individuals in Washington, D.C. about what it's looking like in California. We can inform the state superintendent and the chancellor, as well as you can use that data in a regional way to talk with your local legislators so that you give them an update as to what's happening. And it's likely that we'll probably do this twice this year as we see how things shift with COVID. So we'll kind of be tracking that. The next bullet here is join me at 3 o'clock for the welcome back video. It's gonna be very brief, similar to last year, 10-minute video with about 10 minutes of questions and answers. It will be recorded so that if you aren't able to attend, or if you don't have, you haven't sent it out to all your staff to attend, similar to last year, that you can use in a staff meeting. It's really geared towards administrators, teachers, office staff. It's geared to anyone in who are supporting our adult ed students. And then starting tomorrow, Burlington English will be spotlighting California on a 3-day series of webinars. Those are beginning each day at 11:30. Tomorrow is really focused on, from the Department of Education's perspective, on how we shifted and pivoted to work with our state leadership projects to ensure that information was coming out to all of you in training. Day 2 on Wednesday will be focused on our state leadership projects and what they've been doing to provide support and resources. And then the very last day on Thursday, we have 3 different programs that are going to be spotlighted on what they did. So we hope that you will also sign up for that and register for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Javier to see if he has anything that he would like to add.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you for those updates. I really have nothing to add. I just want to thank everyone for their continuous engagement, such as sessions as these, to make sure we're openly dialoguing about all the aspects of our program. And I really encourage you to participate in this survey. This allows us to tell the story and also learn more about things you're struggling with and the things you're excelling. And so we could share those stories. So I just want to thank you, everyone, for their participation, and please stay engaged.
Thank you, Carolyn and Javier, for those updates and greetings. I will now turn it over to Jay, who will talk to us about one of the areas of importance that were identified in the topics poll, which has a lot to do with remote testing. Jay, are you there?
Hello, hopefully everybody can hear me fine. I can see the group. A lot of you have probably seen these slides and heard this before, but hopefully some of you haven't, and there'll still be an opportunity here. But we'll start with the update on the federal memos. I kind of feel like this sets the table for all the other updates we're talking about. So as far as I know, the most recent update continues to be from the end of May. It continues to allow remote testing. We in California continue to say, yes, we're going to be implementing remote testing in this state. We've responded to the feds accordingly. The recent memo that came out in the end of May kind of goes 2 different directions. It allows for placement and federal reporting without a pre-test. So that says, yes, it understands that with COVID-19, there's a lot of issues with, being able to get everybody done right away, being able to get everybody done at placement, being able to get all of these tasks complete early in the year when a lot of schools and colleges are closed. So it allows for self-reported placement, meaning you can use things like oral interview, writing samples, your own local appraisal. You can use education history, whatever you deem appropriate to place the student into the appropriate level, appropriate program, and appropriate class. So you can do that without a pretest. But in the same memo, it reiterates the fact that a pre and post test gain is still required to achieve that measurable skills gain. So it just separates what's necessary for placement versus what's necessary to actually get the gain. There's the link to that federal information. As we said, the memos, before these memos came out in March, April, May, there was no remote testing. Prior to that, all testing had to be done with an in-person proctor present. So it was a new thing there, March, April, May, that it was even allowed. So as such, everybody had to throw their hat in the ring and send a very specific memo to the feds outlining how we're going to do it. So California did that in early May. So it was a memorandum with all of our guidelines. You see the link there. if you have any concerns about our state policy related to remote testing. I'm sorry, next, we're 2 slides up. Sorry, I'm not saying next slide here, sorry. So next one here, that one's good. Sorry, I'll cue you a little better, sorry about that. So one thing I wanted to bring up is we have our statewide memo on remote testing. With that, we have that agency-wide remote testing agreement. So that was also something we outlined in training in early May. We've had it on our website since that time. What I think has caused a little confusion is everybody needs to redo it. So there's kind of some understandable confusion. Everybody did this in May or even early June in some cases. And now here we are, July, August, and we have to do it all over again. The short answer is that remote testing agreement is part of the local assessment policy, which is what everybody needs to update at the beginning of the program year. So just like you update that local assessment policy and have for many years at the beginning of the year, the same thing holds true for that remote testing agreement. So that will just be something that everybody does at the start of the year with your local assessment policy. So that is something we have been talking a lot about lately. It's important to update this in a year, but probably more important than ever this year, given that we're doing all of these new things related to things like remote testing and distance learning. We've been highlighting a section called Appendix C. This is a portion of the statewide assessment policy and the local assessment policy. It's the short answer to the question, what do we have in place that gives us our official statewide guidance related to distance learning. The truth is we've actually had statewide policies on this for a long time. It's just not something that many people are that familiar with. The slightly longer answer is all those policies have been included in Appendix C of our statewide assessment policy. So you can see what it includes. It includes the basic definition of what we mean by distance learning, talks about assessment, the sort of instructional curricula. Are you using videos? Are you using educational software, etc., as well as some information about how you're choosing to record instructional hours for learners that are enrolled in distance learning. So those are all really important things to do this year, given that we're all probably going to be doing something related to distance learning and remote testing. Important every year, but this year more than ever, there's the link with all that information. Next slide, please. Okay, just a little bit. Here's the benefits and challenges. We've talked a lot about this, so I'm sure just about all of you have heard the benefits and challenges. The obvious benefit, of course, is it's still what is out there to achieve a measurable skill gain. I'll just add, I know I've done a bunch of workshops in the last couple of months kind of highlighting other ways to record gains, knowing that testing is going to be difficult. But I'll add the way that that really helps you is more on the state reporting side for CAEP, for WIOA too, when it comes to federal reporting and things like payment points. The way you get a measurable skill gain continues to be completing a pre-post pair. So that's by far the most obvious benefit. I think probably because we've been highlighting alternatives so much for things like CAEP, and so much for, during 1920 when we were in force majeure, people don't realize that that force majeure was temporary. We were in the force majeure, unable to test reporting mode in program year 1920. We're now done with program year 1920. It's now 2021. So force majeure doesn't apply anymore. I do feel like they've kind of left the window open for that to be possible in 2021, but I really don't think it's going to be anything we're going to see soon. So for now, there is no force majeure. That was like so last year. Now that we're in 2021, the policy continues to be, if you want to get a payment point, you need to complete a pre-test and you need to complete a post-test. Obviously, we think, no matter what happens with COVID-19, that we'll continue to have remote testing, whether it's for pre-post or for EL Civics. Now it provides another way of doing it kind of permanently, no matter how we are with things like COVID-19. That's not to say there aren't challenges. There's been a lot of, everybody's been up in the air all summer about whether people are open or not. Lots of issues with equity. You know, if you don't have an equity issue where the students can't afford computers, you may have a tough environment at home, you know, where kids are using the computer for school, or if not that, you know, students are just in noisy environments that's not particularly conducive to something like standardized testing. So we understand there's lots and lots and lots of issues with students getting that done, you know, in the age of budget cuts. That makes a difficult situation that much more difficult. So we're working on trying to come up with solutions that include better ratios, you know, and get more students access. Next slide, please. If you're looking for more overview information, here's a good overview with videos and so on. So, you know, here's, you know, a good link to our remote testing videos. It took a little while to come up with one that really characterized this very well. But after a few shots at it, we kind of got it right. So I really think some end up loving this process, others not so much. But whether you love it or not, you'll walk away thoroughly understanding exactly what this process is like. You can see there's the remote testing video. There's a more specific one on how to register testing stations. We also have some recording PowerPoints, some official administration guidance documents. We have that California remote testing agreement, the CDE memorandum. All of those things are on that same remote testing page on the CASAS website. Next slide, please. Sorry, two from now. So next one from here, two, sorry. So then, you know, we also have some information on, you know, EL Civics. Anecdotally, agencies have had an easier time doing remote testing for EL Civics than for pre and post testing. Again, guidelines, documents, some webinar recordings, all kinds of information on how to do that on that same remote testing page. Next slide, please. Okay, and then some other creative things. We've been talking a lot about this at network meetings. Lots of different, you know, creative ways people are doing it. Parking lot testing. We've had some hybrid solutions with some people, you know, with staff on site and students remotely. You know, some following social distancing with on-site testing. Everybody's slightly different, but there's been a lot of brainstorming on different ways to try to go through with this. We've put up a couple videos now. We're working with agencies to try to perfect this a little bit more, but we've had a couple agencies with some success on some of these alternative ways of doing it. You can see on our website some of those solutions that have been coming up as well. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just a summary chart of all the ways to do it. Again, we're 1-to-1, 1-to-5 now. Hopefully we'll get some better ratios here soon. Next slide. Okay, this just came out, I believe, on Wednesday. It's the reading level indicator. We've been talking about it a lot, but haven't necessarily had it available. Now we have it available. I'll tie this back to that same federal memo where it talks about needing pre and post testing for gains, but allowing for informal assessment for placement. So some of you have things in place that you do already, but a lot of you have been saying, yeah, that will be helpful to keep it informal, but you don't necessarily have anything locally you can use. So we have this CASAS Reading Level Indicator to hopefully fill that void. The two big advantages to this are, number one, the student can do it on his or her cell phone. Number two, it does not require a proctor. So the downside is it doesn't give you a scale score. That's on purpose. It's just set up to place the student into one of those federal levels. It places the student into all 6 ABE levels and the top 4 levels, I believe, ESL 3 or higher on the ESL side. So it does not give a CASAS scale score, but it does show the appropriate level placement, which is what the feds are suggesting in that Octane Memo 20-5. So it won't get you going on pre and post testing, but it will enable you to at least place the student in the right level in class and so on. It's Form 601R. It just was released in a new build about a week ago. Next slide, please. So again, the advantages are you don't need a proctor. You don't need the student to have a regular computer. The student can do it on his or cell phone. The technology in TE I've been equating to the technology we have for that employment and earnings survey. That is, you use the TE student portal feature to send invites to students. So in this case, students that you want to administer the RLI, you go ahead and select them in the student demographics lister, and then you just click a button that will send that invitation out via email, via text, or both. That is the same options you have in that core performance survey. So you select which students you want to receive this, and then you select text, email, or both, and then the student will receive that invitation on her or his cell phone. Once the student clicks that link and accepts the invitation, that will allow the student to directly access this assessment on the cell phone and complete it right there on the phone. And once the student completes it, the student can click the final link on the cell phone, and that will automatically send these results right back to your TE database. Again, not giving you a scale score, but giving you placement information on all the students that complete this assessment. Next slide. Okay, and then this is just showing you how to do it. And if you're looking for the results, you can look in the test lister. Next slide. Okay, a new thing this year, and 2 more TE updates. One is the quarterly data submission wizard. So we've talked about this since, really last fall. That is, we were going to have a way for you to submit everything, including that data integrity report, in one fell swoop. It's been true for a long time that you've been able to submit your data automatically, but not necessarily the data integrity report. So now you'll be able to do that with that submission wizard, where DIR and data will be done each quarter in that automated wizard. Next slide, please. The one other update I don't have a slide on, but I wanted to bring up proxy. Sorry, there's not a slide on it. We'll be talking a lot about this in network meetings in September, but another update from TE that might help with testing and so on is the proxy wizard has been updated. The proxy is definitely not new. It's been around for 20 years. Historically, it allows you, I've always used the word carbon copy. That is, it allows you to carbon copy tests from one program year to the next. Historically, that date range has always been May 12th to June 30th. This year and this year only, because of all the obvious issues with COVID-19, that date range will be January 1 to June 30th. So for this year, if you had a lot of students that perhaps completed tests there, in January, February, early March or whatever, and you're having trouble reaching all your students now, you can proxy their tests that took place early in the year before you closed and potentially have that serve as the student's pre-test for this year. Obviously, it's not going to solve all the problems, but for specific students, that might turn out to be really helpful. Okay, so almost done here. We've got the new agency toolkit. That's another issue. We've got a lot of new WIOA 2 agencies, so lots of good information there. Next slide. Okay, another quick update is we're just about finished relating CASAS to GED and HiSET. So for old CASAS tests, we had data that showed that positive performance in CASAS directly relates to positive performance on HiSET and GED. We're just about done with those data studies for our goals, reading and math, so we'll be able to make the same claims for goals as we have with our other tests. Next slide. Okay, we've updated some accommodations, especially for visual impairments. This probably affects a few of you, but not a lot of you. But if you do have agencies, especially with visual impairments, it's always been a very challenging disability. The one that I dare say is the toughest to really work around. So we've done a lot of upgrading to our accommodations with visual impairments that will hopefully make it easier to serve those kind of individuals. More information on our CASAS accommodations page on that link. Next slide. And then last but not least, we have Immigrant Integration Indicator, or I3 reports. It's kind of been forgotten, but we had the AB 2098 a couple years ago that put forward the legislation to record data on immigrant integration. Again, it's been forgotten in a lot of ways because of all the obvious, but we now have some reports. There's a couple that are sort of like CASAS competency reports, only it gives you the statement of the EL Civics COAPs, and it relates information at the student agency and class level to EL Civics COAPs results to those immigrant integration indicator or I3 outcomes. The other thing worth mentioning is there will be a new column on the TE summary report this year to record the those I3 outcomes. That is those COAPs that relate to immigrant integration indicators will be an official CAEP outcome and reported on the CAEP summary as a newly formed I3 column for CAEP summary official outcomes. And I think on that note, I'll quit. Was there maybe a question? I'm not sure of the exact timeline for goals, but it should be really soon. We're making the changes to that TE individual skills profile, so we wouldn't really be able to do that without the data. So it should be finalized soon, but I'm not sure of the exact time. I'm not sure what list you're looking for available, so I'm not sure what that refers to. Okay, I'll stop. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jay. And a follow-up, Cindy said, will there be a separate list of I3 COAPs?
No, they won't be separate COAPs. They'll be the COAPs you already know and love. But what we have done is related, not all, but many of those COAPs to those 8 immigrant integration categories. So if you're interested in how that was done, we do have some documents. Feel free to email. I can email a document to you that kind of relates those specific COAPs, those 8 categories of I3, outcomes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jay. And before we turn it over to Randy, I'd like to update everyone just to let you know that once Randy is done with his brief presentation, we'll move into the discussion centered on reopening plans for the 2020-2021 program year. So if you all could start thinking about how your agency is responding to reopening, some of the successes that have been put in place or successful plans, and then some of the challenges and / barriers, because that will be the basis of our discussion during that part. So I will turn it over to Randy.
Great, thank you, Veronica. In deference to the fact that I know that people's interests are around these issues related to, remote testing, distance education, and there's a lot of almost, really kind of existential angst about how those things are going to impact the coming academic year. I've kept the pieces of this related to West Ed pretty simple and straightforward. I'm really focusing mostly on the work we're going to do this year, so you can see what's going to happen in terms on the data related to when data is going to be available, what kinds of professional development that we have on tap for the year, and just other issues that are in our current work plan. Now, I will say that work plans are meant to iterate, and so that, as we have often responded to needs to come around and do regional kind of professional development or institutional professional development, we strongly, on the launch board team and at West Ed, encourage you to reach out to CASAS and us with those requests so that we can be as responsive as possible to what you need and not just what we have planned based on what's happened in future years. So related to the adult education pipeline this year, there are a few going to happen, one of which is that between now and the new build next winter, build 4, we're going to be trying to do some user interface enhancements to really help increase access to resources to help people in the field. That's not just administrators, but teachers and counselors understand what the metrics are, how they're calculated, and what they're actually measuring. So what that means is we're going to be looking to embed resources where you'll be able to kind of roll over a metric and see a natural language description of it. You have much more direct access to the calculations for those metrics. And then we're going to be doing a complete revamp of all of the resources, learning resources, the labor market information, educational data systems, WIOA, and other topics that are important to how the launch board is constructed that you'll be able to access to help you make it more useful for you. Build 4, which will have the 2019-2020 program data. Our target for that is March 1st, 2021. That coincides with the deadline for the submission of the end of year report to the legislature. Do we just want to be sure that the legislature and the LAO's office and the Department of Finance have full access to the data set and the data from the previous program year in line with that deadline? So that is our target here. Often that's dependent on when we receive data sets. CASAS is very timely with their data set, but we have occasionally received MIS files a little bit late in the year for us to hit that target exactly when we want to. Although, you know, now that we're in build 4, and we will continue to confer with CASAS and to hopefully get more accurate around how the data can really more accurately reflect what's going on in the field. We're going to pivot pretty heavily to doing more with professional development this year. This is part of our scope with the CAEP Office. So we want to do more around using the launch board data for program improvement and planning. And as part of that, we would like to be able consortia and to help practitioners be more predictive in terms of how would you use the data to begin to think already around your next 3-year plan, which I think is just coming up in a year and a half or so. You know, so how can you begin to see places where you can see students are stuck, or areas where it's like, this is the metric we would like to really focus on along that student and in our students' experience to really get better at and say, we're going to dedicate resources to focusing on this kind of improvement in the next 3-year plan. We want to build upon the non-credit coding workshops that we did last year, where we worked with the colleges, both the program people and the readers, to understand how the metrics are constructed, how the non-credit data actually works within MIS, and to get researchers and program people talking to each other more about how they can be more accurate in both their data collection and how the MIS data elements are coded. But we're thinking about something more like non-credit code. We would love to be able to pull the actual non-credit coding that your institutions are using, and to sit down with you to identify areas where we can see very clearly that there's something that's actually messing up your data, and to really help people get more accurate and be able to have your understanding the MIS elements inform your annual practice in terms of how you record information about your students. And finally, what we've been promising for over a year now is that we want to use the work we did aligning the CB21 course rubrics with the educational functioning levels for adult education, and to begin doing some workshops with K-12 college faculty to begin building those kind of transition structures from adult education coursework into college level coursework in math, English, and ESL. And finally, we want to do some training around the new CTE, adult education CTE mapping tool, and the data set that we have built there to improve adult education career outcomes. Next. Here are some of the metrics issues that we're going to be looking at this year. There will be some new metrics in the launch board this year. I did not do another list here. In the beginning of the year letter, I've included, however, in my part of that, a link to the webinar that Karen and Beltramo and I did about build 3 of the launch board. So you can see all the new metrics that actually have come in this year, and we'll be looking at some new ones next year. If there are things that you want to look at, please let us know that you want to see in the data sets. Some of the coding issues we're going to be paying attention to this year. There are a ton of non-credit courses coded as super tutoring and study skills, and this is skewing the number of reportable individuals that are showing up for a lot of colleges in particular, and we are dedicated to fixing that this year. Additionally, a lot of colleges are coding math and English courses using the basic education or secondary education top codes rather than math or English top codes, and then not providing CB21 codes for those courses means you can't actually then realize this an EFL gain based on CB21 course progression. And so this is something we want to actually explore through policy discussions with the Chancellor's office this year. There's a huge issue coming up that we need to both engage the field and we've raised as a policy issue with the Chancellor's office. As non-credit programs move towards census for funding their non-credit courses, it means we will no longer have instructional contact hours for those courses, which will create issues potentially, I think, for CASAS as well as as well as launch board. And so we're trying to think about what the methodology would be for still being able to distinguish between an adult served or a reportable individual and a participant. We would no longer have access to being able to make that distinction. So we would no longer be able to identify those students who have that 1 to 11 instructional contact hours we have not been able to retain in the system, which becomes an issue for about just around program improvement. That's a pretty important population to pay attention to. Finally, we're looking at the incorporation. We would like to see next year some way to incorporate both the CASAS WIOA Title II survey data and the CTE outcome survey data to begin to provide more nuance around what we're able to track relating to employment, including employment in field of study. We're still kind of exploring that, but we're hoping to begin to kind of look at that for next year. We're still working on getting high school equivalency and diploma award codes in MIS. And we want to have conversations and work with CASAS to see how we begin to get COAPs and immigrant integration data also into the launch board. Once again, this is sort of blue sky stuff, but still pretty important to us if we're going to provide a comprehensive set of data and information for the field moving forward. Next. Finally, and this is just a reminder, so we did a webinar about 3 weeks ago, Ali Balela and I, on the adult education, the adult ed to workforce dashboard. And so we both demonstrated this dashboard and did a webinar related to the data set that sits underneath it. And the raw data set is available in any region or consortia who wants to work with that to begin to understand what is the relationship between K-12 adult education, CTE, and workforce preparation courses compared to what's offered in non-credit programs and what's offered in the credit side for the community colleges, and have the ability to compare those three things against labor market information for your region. And having the ability to both cut that labor market information according to where are the jobs that lead to living wages, where are the jobs that are basically below middle skill jobs, and above middle skill jobs. And it's a planning tool that we're looking to refine this year and identify later in terms of the professional development that we're going to lead, that we want to begin to deploy this in the field and to work with some consortia or some regions around having them look at their data and to suggest refinements and find ways to use this to help you build stronger intersegmental career education programs that really begin in adult education and then but then actually result downstream in some kind of college credential that can really lead to a living wage. And this is just the first step in that process, but we're very excited to take it with you this year. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Randy, and thank you, Jay, for those brief presentations on how you all are supporting the field at this time and plans for the 2020-2021 program year. So the slide that you're looking at now are the results of the topics poll that we have facilitated prior to the start of the regional network meetings. And we asked the field to rank the 5 kind of priorities that we had briefly identified previously. And so adult education reopening plans for the current school year was ranked number 1 with, I believe, close to 70% saying that that was the most important area that they were dealing with at this time. And so we do have another poll, and it's just a quick 3 question poll that I'm going to launch at this time. And it's asking you, does your, and forgive me, I forgot the R in your, but does your agency have a solid reopening plan as of right now? And then question number 2 is, did your agency have access to device distribution like the K-12 districts? And question number 3 is, does your agency have a professional development plan for 2020-21? So I wanted to get your feedback on that. I see people are already completing the poll. It's just to give us a little bit more details as we continue on with the rest of the network meeting today. And so I have, close to 30% who have filled this out. And once we are done, I will share the results so that everyone can kind of see where everyone is along the poll. Okay, and we'll keep it open just for about 10 more seconds. I see people are still filling it out, so thank you very much for your participation. As I mentioned, this gives us a few more details as we move along this afternoon. All right, so I'm going to end the poll, and we have about 45% of our participants today who have completed this. So in terms of a reopening plan, close to 83% or 83% said yes, they do have a reopening plan, when 17% said no. And in terms of device distribution, the majority did not have access to it. And that's what we've been seeing across the board during our regional network meetings and professional development plan for 2021, 60% yes and 40% no. So now thinking about the reopening plan, if I can have people share, for the majority who said, the 83% that said they do have a solid reopening plan, if you can share what that reopening plan looks like and kind of what that specifically entails for those who do not have a solid reopening plan, maybe they can get some ideas about what has been implemented thus far. So does anyone want to share what their agencies or their district's reopening plan, what does that look like? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone who is unmuting themselves to share, and I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So for the, I think there were 17 or 18 people who said yes, a solid reopening plan. By chance want to share what that looks like? And for those of you who do not have a reopening plan, could you let us know what the barriers that you are experiencing when it comes to a reopening plan?
I can share a little bit about how we're reopening.
Okay, great.
I'm from Redlands Adult School. So we've already, for the past several years, have had a online curriculum, which we've used. We use it in the classroom as classroom time as well. And so our classrooms operate more like homerooms where the teacher's there for anybody who needs help, but every student's kind of working on their own subject and at their own pace. So that's going to continue, but now the homeroom is going to be a Zoom meeting where the teacher's available during these hours. The students can continue to work, and they've always had the liberty to work as much extra as they want to from home. So we're going to capture those hours directly from the curriculum company in terms of distance learning hours. Everything will be counted that way this year. And we're doing remote testing. We're doing remote registering of stations and testing students. We're doing them in small batches because it does become difficult to manage. So we are not exceeding the 5 recommendation from CASAS, but or the recommendation of 5 students to test at a time. But we have several teachers right now that they aren't doing classrooms, working and helping us to test students and get them enrolled in classes. It is a slow going process compared to previous years where we could, bring in 30 people into a testing session, but it's working. And so we're getting them ready to get started, and we're going to be working with them through distance learning.
Great. Thank you so much, Delfino, for sharing. And I'm glad to hear that your remote testing strategies are working for your agency, although you are only able to, test a certain number of students at a time. So we have more time in this area. Again, we want to make sure that we are able to share practices with one another and learn from one another. So if I can have other people who want to share, that would be great.
Hello, this is Anna with Asian American Resource Center.
Hello.
Hi. We don't have a set plan, unfortunately. We deal with elderly and veterans and seniors, so they are not, they don't have the technology available for them. And so that's where we have been encountering a hard time trying to see. We opened a Zoom class last Monday, and at this time I have about 12 students that have logged in last week, and hopefully, we're going to continue this week as well. But that's our challenge at the moment, and I have like 4 or 5 that are waiting for a computer or a tablet for them that they can use so they could also log in. And unfortunately, our center does not have that ability to, we don't have computers for them at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think you answered my question. I was going to ask a follow-up question when you said that you deal with the elderly population and they don't have access. I believe you said that they don't have the actual devices, so they don't have a laptop or a tablet as of right No? Okay, and do you know if they have smartphones?
No, 3 of them don't. One of them does, but she says she's clueless on, and I told her I can walk you through it and do it, but she's like, no, I can't.
Okay, got it, got it. So there's that access piece to the devices, but then there's also that comfortability with using the actual device. Well, I'm glad to hear that you were able to open your Zoom class and that you do have 12 students who are in your Zoom class. Does anyone have any maybe strategies or practices that may be working within your agency to still be able to facilitate classes and things like that with the elderly population? I see Kim, she typed in the chat, many elderly have jitterbug phones with limited capabilities. Okay, so that answers my question more. So thank you so much, Kim, for sharing that piece of information. Okay, we have a few more minutes in this section and then we'll move on to OTAN, who will talk to us about technology and distance learning at this time, but we definitely wanted to get a better understanding of the adult education reopening plans for the upcoming year and to be able to share any practices, leverage resources, if you all are using, develop partnerships with others that have worked and have been effective in your reopening plans. Please feel free to share with us. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone come on the line, so we'll move on to OTAN. If there are any other ideas that come up, or maybe you have any questions, we can definitely revisit this topic, but we'll move on to Penny and Netta, who will talk to us about distance learning and technology at this time. Penny and Netta.
Thank you, Veronica. And I think Netta is online as well. If you go ahead and progress to the next slide, please. That would be awesome. So we're here to talk to you a little bit about what OTAN, Outreach and Technical Assistance Network, has been working with our leadership projects as well as CAEP on providing resources and materials to help schools gear up, gear in, get started with trying to deliver instruction in a remote way. So we've been doing technology and distance learning for quite some time, but I thought I'd run through some of these resources here. And if okay with Veronica, can I share my screen? Is that all right? For just a few minutes? I guess she stopped sharing, so I guess I can. Thank you. Oh, you need to enable me, I think. Can I now?
Sorry, I just made you a call.
There you did. I got it. Thanks. Okay. Great. So I just navigated out to the OTAN website, and these resources are in the slide deck that Veronica provided you. So in the case here, on our homepage, we are providing lots of information in terms of what OTAN is doing, and we also provide information on the California Adult Education Training Calendar. So there are links on the page. But the one I want to bring your attention to is over here on the right, is our COVID-19 field support page. And this is a collaborative effort between all of the leadership projects in the state. But I just want to show you what's here real quickly. So I'm going to be scrolling down the page showing you each section from the contributions made by OTAN, and I'll be coming back to these, but also from CalPro and CASAS, as well as the Adult Education Office in providing, copies of their guidance as well as memorandums from OCTAE. And then from the CAEP project as well, they have their own resource pages on COVID-19. And then we have resources here at the bottom for learners. So a lot of times what we've heard in many of our surveys is the access, and we just heard from one of your field team members there, of access to hardware and or internet connectivity. So we do have a section here for free and low-cost internet and devices for learners, for students. So there's some organizations here that have provided their device sharing options that, when they have a device like a Chromebook, that they have documents here for their loan agreements, etc. So if any of you have that opportunity, sometimes you may get that through a community college organization and or through a K-12 system where they will distribute hardware and or Wi-Fi connections and things like that, that there may be some ideas there to help with that. For students, we also have resources because especially sometimes our adult learners can get into some situations where they're getting scammed or they're having some problems understanding what's legitimate information, etc. And then at the very bottom of this page is our additional resources from both our national and international folks for the World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control, as well as some of our partners through CATISOL and the California Council for Adult Ed. So this page can just kind of lead you to a lot of other resources. Now I'm going to go back to the top of the page where we'll go to the OTAN section, because one of the things that we did as our partnerships with all of our leadership projects was to provide some resources and materials to help both our teachers and administrators understand how we can get going with distance. So at the top of this page is the OTAN resource guide, and I'll open that up in just a minute because it's quite lengthy. And then there's also some teacher-generated materials from what we call the Amazing Volunteers. This was led by Corona Norco, Kevin Belcher, and a lot of teachers that he got together to create a series of menus called I Can Go the Distance. And I will show you these in just a moment, but let me just cover them real quickly. And then from World Ed, they did a very nice grouping of materials on what they call Ready, Set, Go, steps to rapidly start distance instruction. And they really have done a very nice job of pulling in a lot of information about distance and online instruction. And then from West Contra Costa Adult Ed, they have a whole piece on remote learning via student mobile phones. For many of our learners, that's the only device they may have available to them. It's not perhaps that they don't have connectivity, or it's not perhaps that they don't have a computer, but that those resources are being put in use by their own children for them to complete their education. So the phone may be the only way that they have access. So this is some resources here to take a look at. And I'm going to go ahead and open up our resources to continue teaching and learning. And this is a page off of that OTAN COVID-19 page, where it's really a guide. There are just an amazing amount of resources here, from getting started to using video to looking at assessment, finding online curricula, resources for program areas, either ABE, ASE, Career Tech Ed, and ESL. And there's lots of links and materials here. So as you scroll through this page, you'll see that we'll have websites, we'll have notes that's, what you can do with this. And then on the third column here is OTAN and other support. So if OTAN has done a webinar and or has other resources available, we will have put them in this document to help you understand more of how this particular resource could be used. You can see what other teachers are doing in the field. So I can just scroll quickly a little bit here about what you can see about, tips for distance learning. We've got, online course design, about online course development resources. We have an OTAN Tech Talk on blended learning, and we have articles from Pro Literacy. So we really tried to pull together a lot of resources just on, some of the tools that you can use to promote and expand your distance learning program. The other page I want to show you, again, this was the one, I'm back on the OTAN page now, from the Amazing Volunteers. This one's called I Can Go the Distance. And this was, again, a partnership led by Kevin Belcher out of Corona Norco. And it is a series of these great little menus. So there's a nice little guide here on the beginning. And when you go through each of these program areas, there's a menu for each program area. So here's the I Can Go the Distance for ESL. And they've laid this out like a nice little menu: starters, communication tools, first course, let's reclaim class time, schedule a meeting with your students. The second course is online curriculum to keep them learning. And they give you resources for curriculum specific to that program area. And then for desserts, they have, perfect editions for unforgettable DL classes. So they talk about Flipgrid and Voice of America. Each one of these pages is just chock full of resources and materials and links to other spaces where you may find great tools that you could use. And this was a consolidation of work with a whole team of teachers that came up with these tools as how they were connecting with their learners. So again, this is the I Can Go the Distance page. If I go back to the OTAN website, the one I'm going to jump down to now is at the bottom is the OTAN previous webinars. These were all of the webinars that OTAN did in partnership with our leadership project and CAEP and putting together resources and materials in a webinar format. So as I click on this link to view previous OTAN webinars, you will come to a page with a table of all kinds of our presentations that we've done. Now, it's a page that you'd have to scroll forever, but our specialist in office, Anthony Bjork, is one of our project specialists. He put together a wonderful index here, and it's at the very top where it says Webinar Table Index. And I'm just going to jump down there just because it's easier to scroll than scrolling the entire page. But he has taken all of our webinars and categorized them and curated them into different lists and places where you might be interested in understanding about different tools. So we have them divided out by program area. We have them divided out by a particular tool. So you can see on this list here that we have, we have webinars for ABE and ASE, and we talk about CK12, we talk about math resources, we talk about Common Lit, we talk about GED. If you look down the page, we have a whole list of the CASAS webinars that we did that were helping with considerations when implementing distance learning, looking at strategies for delivering distance learning virtually, and on and on. This is a very long list. I'll just scroll a little bit here so I get to the D's and the E's, and you can see that we also have a section on equity, increasing equity in online learning. We have lots on gamification and ESL, and a whole lot on Google. It's a very popular topic as we were working with our partners as well as the field and understanding what can they do to help engage and keep their learners coming back to class. So as I scroll down this list, you'll see we have resources about Microsoft, about Moodle and North Star as a digital literacy tool, putting English to work. We also talk about reading and read theory and Screencastify. You can see that there is a whole lot of information here. Now, this isn't all that OTAN has done. I'm going to go ahead and let me go back to my home page here. So a quick scroll, but it is a place for you to get started. And the COVID field support page isn't just about OTAN. It's about what all of our other partners have done. But that isn't all that OTAN offers, and we have some great resources that I'm going to ask Netta to talk about is our teaching with technology tools and some other items that I think you'll find very interesting and helpful in for your teachers, as well as get to other resources. So Netta, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to you.
Actually, keep sharing, Penny.
Oh, sorry. I'll put it back up. Will
so
do.
I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I know all of you are frequent visitors of otan.us, and you probably are familiar with I'm going to go to the resource tab all the way on the very top, and then you'll see curriculum offers, and you'll also see the teaching with technology tool. Let's go ahead and start with the teaching with technology tool. So when you're thinking about building some of your distance and courses on an LMS, and perhaps you're using different strategies to reach your students, you might want to look at these menus for your specific ABE, ASE, ESL resources that you can embed and use as supplemental material as you're building your courses via distance. Now we'll go ahead and go into the curriculum offers page under the resources tab. And here you'll find some additional supports for students and for teachers through some of our partners and other free resources and options that we have for you online. So definitely utilize some of these. I'll highlight CK12 because it is an open educational resource. And so when we talk about free Fluxbooks or textbooks that are specific to ASE learners and or students that are interested in getting additional assistance with their studies towards their HiSET or their GED, you can find additional supports and resources through CK12. And I think we have some slides where we're going to ask to hear from you. So we want it to be, now that our presentation is over, really want to hear about how have you built some of your distance learning courses and for your fall semester. So if we release our screen share and hand it back over to Veronica to show us the slides, we'd love to facilitate a conversation to hear about either some of the resources that you've been utilizing through OTAN, and or how you build some of your courses for the fall semester. And I know there are plenty of names out there that we can ask to share with us what they've been doing for distance learning at their agencies.
And both Ned and I have this little set of dice that we can throw that then we can just pick people out of the group. So we'd love to hear from volunteers. How are things going with your distance teaching and distance learning?
And it's ranked most important here. When we're looking at this slide, right, we'd love to hear some of your implementation strategies and or how you feel OTAN can support you through some of your efforts here and what you've been utilizing with OTAN. So I naturally will call on all our El Monte Rosemead friends on the line because they just finished our DLAC 2 cohort. So I'm going to ask somebody from El Monte to unmute and kind of tell us a little bit about what you've been doing for distance learning. And I know, Carrie, you have a question in the chat.
Yes, I'm on the line. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So our school, we're fortunate enough to have a group do the DLAC training the last 2 years. So they really just took that and ran with it. They this summer, we didn't have classes, but we had teachers working together under the leadership of our DLAC team to create Moodle courses to prep for the fall. So we have our levels of ESL have them. We have high school and we have CTE, ABE classes set up in Moodle. We weren't able to do all of them, but we did a significant amount. And so we've really kind of hit the ground running with that. It was a big undertaking, but they did a great job and put together some quality courses for our students. One struggle was that we had been practicing with Zoom, and now we're told that we need to use Google Meets. So that was a shift. So we're looking for things that can be good training. We're not using Google Classroom per se, but Google Meets as the platform for the video conferencing with our students. So that's the part for us that is a challenge because it was a decision that was made right before school started, and we'd been practicing with Zoom leading up to this. So while our teachers are doing well with the Moodle part, it's the video conferencing shift that's causing the most challenge for us at the moment.
And Carrie, I just saw your note in the chat too. I don't think we have anything specifically on Google Meets, but I can talk to Melinda. We might be able to help you with that.
Okay.
Either, between that and, also remember that we can do a virtual, session for your agency on a specific topic. Remember, OTAN does think of us as calling on us for our face-to-face training, but rather now calling on us for, the virtual face-to-face. So, that's still available. And also, we do have a plan of series of webinars coming up for early fall. So we definitely want to, if you're not already following us on the social media platforms and or subscribe to our channels, please do so because you'll get notified as soon as we post those series. And I believe Google Meet is one that's coming up.
Great, thank you.
So who else do we have? Tell us some plans that you have for distance learning and how you plan on reaching your students. Todd, your webcam turned on and your mic went unmute, so naturally I'm going to ask you.
I think I did that by accident. I'll just share briefly. We're in our third week of starting now. We're still enrolling students based on our online registration process, but teachers are up and running with their students. Couple of different platforms by program area. We have a high school diploma program that's normally a traditional in-person session or program that we're using Canvas for. We're using that because my high school teachers in that program are high school teachers by day in our district. So our districts moved to that at our comprehensive high schools, Canvas. So we thought we would mirror that at night since we could piggyback on the training and the support. There's been some challenges. There's a kind of a learning curve with Canvas, as some of you may be aware. So we use that because our district was using it and the college uses it, community college, so we thought that would be a natural fit. But again, just technology and training, and that's combined with Zoom as well. We're using it also in a couple of mastery level ESL sessions and for our GED prep. And then in our ESL program, we use Burlington English, but that's not a standalone presentation software per se. It's supplemental. And we're using Zoom a lot in our ESL program combined with Burlington and Google Classroom. Our GED program, again, we're using Canvas, and some teachers are using Google Classroom and Zoom. I didn't mandate Canvas in that area, but we wanted to pilot it and begin using it. We have Odysseyware that we use for our online diploma program, so that program didn't change as much other than just the challenges of communicating with students from a distance. So implementing some of this from a distance, not having in person or at an in-person orientation has been challenging, again, with technology glitches. There's been some with Canvas and with Zoom and some of the integration of that the last couple of weeks. So we're just working through that. The focus is teachers reaching out, communicating, establishing basic contact with students and how technology will be managed, and going a little slower in the beginning to go faster, hopefully later with the curriculum. We're still enrolling ESL. We've pretty much got all of our high school diploma and CTE squared away and finalizing ESL now. We use the CASAS test. We were allowed to pilot that CASAS test for placement. So as students register online, and then we reach out to them and we follow up with that assessment once we've confirmed what kind of schedule they're looking at, morning or evening, and then we follow up with that CASAS placement test and then enroll them in the course with the teacher. So that's what we're in the midst of finalizing right now. I think we're close to 2,000 students enrolled right now across all of our program areas of high school diploma, ESL, and GED, and some CTE courses as well.
That's fantastic.
Wow,
So
that is fantastic.
the orientation, were you saying that is live? Are you doing that live online?
What we're doing with orientations is we're doing some recorded video, some as an orientation, and then teachers are using kind of Zoom, live Zoom orientations and recording them as well, but using that as an orientation methodology. But again, the struggle for us has been communicating with students, emails especially. We're doing a lot of phone calling, and just the navigating of systems, and once we get something squared away, sure enough, there's a pitfall with the technology. Something goes down or doesn't integrate. Zoom had some issues early this morning that were not our district related, but were Zoom platform related, that I think they got worked through by mid-morning. So it just adds to a level of confusion and uncertainty and frustration. So that's why I've tried to tell our teachers, just relax, connect, call, talk through, start with real basic navigation directions for your students until we can kind of hit the ground running a little bit more curricular wise. And now you can address individual needs. Maybe you can do some student groups with those that are more experienced, just trying to be really flexible and adjust a little on the fly, especially here in the beginning.
Those are, oh, sorry.
I have one question. If your teacher's using Canvas, were they using curriculum that was already developed by themselves, or did they design and create their own courses?
Yeah, most of our teachers, even at the high school level, I mean, they did some department stuff, but it was a little bit late in the summer that they'd used it for summer school as a pilot. They really felt they needed to do something, and it combined with School Loop and a few other moves we had to make away from some platforms that couldn't do what we needed to do. So the courses are really in Canvas are really being designed by teacher and or very small collaborative groups. We didn't have an opportunity for the district to say, hey, we're gonna produce this for you. So a lot of PD, a lot of assistance with our tech coaches and stuff, but really those teachers are designing their courses. again, my intent was, since our teachers were using it by day in the high schools, they wouldn't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel for their night classes. So, my English 3 teacher at the adult school teaches English 3 by day. And so she's using that same development, minus, modifying it for her adults. And so the intent of that was to make it a little bit easier on my adults teachers, because I didn't want to run those folks off. They're good teachers. I'm lucky to have them. But if I burdened them with a different system, I felt I'd lose them altogether. So that part's actually been pretty good. Again, combined with some frustration with learning the system late in the summer and getting prepared. But that's what we did with Canvas. They are creating their curriculum in Canvas.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Certainly.
So, yeah, Canvas has been a hot topic for a lot of schools in California, whether they're using the OTAN Moodle, they're using Moodle on standalone on their own, or Google Classroom and expanding on Google Classroom. But, starting to think about these learning management systems and using these learning management systems when things, I always say, go back to normal. I refuse to agree that there is going to be a new normal, right? We're gonna head back to normal. But when we think about organizing ourselves in our classes and our courses, we think about adding that component of a learning management system. And I love the efforts that everybody's making to really organize themselves in some sort of either like Google Classroom or a standalone learning management system. And that's very much key, especially with our adult learners. I love to remind myself that I myself am an adult learner. And so when I go back and take courses on my own, I'm put into a learning management system. And so our students are adults as well. And we're setting them up for when they move on to community colleges and or other avenues that they're going to be headed into. So anyway, let's see, I think we're maybe running out of time. Oh, Jody, would you like to unmute and share about the Ideal Handbook? I don't think we expanded on that too much.
Sure. I real quickly just like to give you a shout out, Penny and Nada, for helping the About Students Consortium by sharing the Ideal Handbook on distance learning. It was a wonderful resource that our members used to help with starting up distance learning programs, as well as really developing and strategically thinking about how to really implement a quality program and what those components look like. It was a great resource. So the field could probably use that. If you have a link that you can, there it is. Thank you, Nada. But it's a great resource if any of you are looking for the how-tos. What do you include in an orientation? What should you do in connecting with students? How do you support your teachers with distance learning? And how do you strategize how to keep your students as well as recruit your students? So we did a workshop in the About Students Consortium, and it proved to be a really useful resource for us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is through our partners through World Ed. And we, with our Digital Leadership Academy, they actually take 2 courses designed solely on Distance Learning 101 and how to use this handbook in a distance learning and adult ed setting. So yes, briefly, this is helpful to kind of get your structure and orientation and pieces of distance learning intact. So, and if you have already or are interested in applying in our future DLAC cohort, please do. But yes, this is a very helpful tool that we have through our partnership with World Ed. I think Penny has or Emma rather has a piece to share with us as well. Emma Diaz?
Yes, hi, thank you.
Hi.
I just wanted to share that our counseling piece is still, really intact. We've adjusted them because we have transition counselors that are housed at the colleges. We wanted to make sure they were still able, because ideally they work on site at the K-12 setting. So absent being on a campus, they began using Cranium Cafe. But we found there were some challenges with Cranium Cafe and some of our adult ed learners. So they resorted to using a phone, calling them via phone, and then from there transitioning and getting them onto Zoom. So they've had to adjust how they're able to connect with students. But what they've reported, even in those last, 2 months or so between the April and May, and now with students coming back to school, my counselors are saying that students are still very interested in going to the college. So we want to make sure we're still able to support transitioning students to the colleges. And so they're using all the different methods that they could, which is starting on the phone, walking them on how to get onto Zoom, and then eventually, you know, doing a whole student education plan even via Zoom. So those are just some things that we're still working on, and that I hope, you know, anyone that can benefit from what we're doing, you know, we have some dedicated counselors that are working really hard to make sure that we can adjust the technology to the level of information that our students need. So thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome. And I think as we looked at the slides here, we brought up the student support services. So Emma, your comments are very timely. It looks like, you know, with looking at this list, and I'm wondering just from the group here, how many of you, and you can just put this in the chat, if you could just even put one or two of these items of how you may be helping your learners with these student support services in some way. I know some schools are doing work with, you know, local food banks, or they're helping with childcare or other things. So you may or may not know of these, but you might have some information that can, you know, help others to understand how they can help students in these areas. It's not always just providing good instruction, it's also supporting them in the ways that where they have those barriers and helping them. So I think from there, and Veronica, give me a time check. I think we are out of time. So are we ready to move on to the next section? Sorry.
Thank you, Penny. Actually, this is the next section, so
okay,
we can continue here. And thank you, Penny and Netta, for that presentation as well as your follow-up discussion. There were a lot of great practices that are currently being implemented or that have been implemented and are still going on. So I definitely appreciate that. And there has been some great sharing going on in the chat. I saw that a few of our attendees share what they are doing, the practices that they have at their agencies. And then also Greg Hill shared a resource that could be utilized with parents on how to support their children as they are participating in remote learning as well. So thank you, Greg, for that resource. I hope everyone finds that helpful, because that's another area of support for our adult learners as well as the child. So does anyone else have any other areas that they would like to, you know, share practices, or even let's talk about barriers that you are experiencing? Here on this slide, we have the student support services top 3 subtopics that people found that were important for them. So employment was one of them, counseling and transition services. So Emma had touched on that and what her consortium is doing to support students in that manner. And then mental health support was also another area. So does anyone want to unmute themselves and talk about how you are supporting your students as it relates to student support services? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. Eileen typed in the chat that her consortium held a workshop with the Department of Health Services and our classified staff. Very well received. We will do a virtual workshop for classified to direct students to help. And so Eileen, I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself, but could you tell us what that workshop was about? Some of the topics that you all covered?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, we had a consortium-wide staff development, and the workshop I facilitated was with the classified staff, and we invited the Department of Health Services to come and give it on mental health, doctors, nurses, dentists, whatever they needed to find immediately, because classified has the best answers for that. They're the first line that people speak with. And the majority of our classified staff from the whole consortium was the need for mental health, abuse help, And the Department of Health Services then said that they could come and do a Zoom workshop for us. And that'll be discussed in our next meeting for the date for that. People are so lonely right now, and they're frustrated and scared. And so mental health seems to be one of our biggest issues in getting the students to participate in their ESL classes or any of their education right now. If we can give them the help they need to get through that, then the rest might be a little bit easier. That's just what we're doing for this at this particular moment on that subject.
Okay, thank you so much, Eileen, for sharing. That's definitely a great strategy and brings up something that we discussed in one of the other regional network meetings. I think it was the Merced Consortium. They have a more specific name, but it's the Merced Consortium. And they, a teacher, I believe, in their consortium developed YouTube videos on how, like social emotional YouTube videos on how to cope with what's going on at this time. And they found it to be very helpful for their adult learners. And they shared a link on that aspect on those videos. And so we on the CAEP website. So I'll post a link of exactly where those videos are so that others can have access and you'll be able to share them with your adult learners as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and then another district, I think it was Hesperia School District, they also have a YouTube channel full of videos like relaxation and, you know, if you need to meditate, kind of guided meditation videos and things of that nature that have been very helpful as well. So we posted the link for that as well. So I'll share all of those resources in the chat. They're on the CAEP COVID-19 resource page. And I see Kim Walker typed in the chat, we're making wellness check calls to our students. Our district also created a virtual comm room. So coming at along the same lines. Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing that. A simple call just to see how they're doing and kind of offer that compassion inside from an educational standpoint is very helpful. Oh, she shared a link for Hesperia. Thank you so much. And then Emma typed that their transition counselors are reporting that most students are needing to have longer sessions to connect first about the barriers they're facing and then feel supported before they discuss academics. Absolutely. So that check-in process prior to going into more the academic side, the business side, but just checking in to see how they are doing. So yes, definitely making sure our students feel supported at this time is very important. Okay, great. Kim shared the Hesperia virtual comm room. So that's what I was referring to. Yes, thank you so much, Kim, for sharing that again. So anyone else want to share other practices? Employment, are you working with your local workforce development board to make sure that your students have access to employment opportunities at this time? Any other partnerships that you may be leveraging?
This is Anna. We here in our agency also provide bill payment assistance. We get together with the CAEP Office, and that has helped our students as well, you know, release their stress and financial burden that they have at this time as well.
Yes, absolutely. That taking care of the home, that home life, making sure that everything is in place and bills are paid absolutely will be helpful at this time, especially for those who may be experiencing job loss or reduction in hours and things of that nature. So yes, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. So we are right at 2:29, so we have about 1 more minute for this regional network call. We hope that it's been beneficial for you all and that you've learned something new, something that you can take back to your agency or to your consortium and discuss further, maybe even implement. Are there any last questions or any last thoughts that people would like to discuss prior to ending this meeting? Okay, I am typing in the chat the Cal Adult Ed website, and on the homepage, that's where we have all of the, that's where we have a link to our COVID-19 resources page. And like I mentioned, we do have some of the resources that have been shared over the last couple of weeks that we have put on the website, as well as other resources that have been shared previously. If there are any resources that anyone would like to share with us that you would like to get out to the field, please be sure to send them to tap@caledoed.org, and we'll be sure to get that information out to the rest of the field. We also include these updates in our weekly newsletter. So if there's a practice that is going on that you feel like the rest of the field should highlight, that newsletter goes to about 4,000 individuals. So if there are other things that you would like to share and you want to get it out to a broader audience, please be sure to share it with us. We would definitely be sure to share it. All right, so I am not seeing anything. Thank you all for all of the thank yous, and thank you all for your participation this afternoon. Again, we hope that it was worthwhile. We're still trying to find that balance between presentation and discussion. So hopefully we're getting closer to that, but we're always looking for opportunities for growth and improvement. So once you receive that evaluation, please be sure to fill it out and let us know if there are any areas that we could improve upon, or if there are any areas that we did not talk about that you would like to see discussed in future webinars or regional network meetings, etc. Thank you to all of the presenters. So thank you to Carolyn as well as Javier from the CAEP office. Thank you to the TAP team, so myself, Holly, and Renee. Thank you to Jay. Thank you to Randy Tillery. He had to leave for another call, but thank you to him. And thank you to Netta and Penny from OTAN for contributing to today's regional network meeting. I hope you all have a great day, and we will see you next time.